Usually this sort of stuff is ridiculous. Dabo Swinney has been really good at being ridiculous through the years, talking about poor little Clemson and all this stuff. So whenever a head coach starts down the path of, I don't know about that what I'm talking about from Kirby Smart is the same exact thing as we've witnessed from Dabo Swinney and his band of merry men. But he was talking not that long ago about his hunger. If you remember this really famous clip that leaked, I think it was not for. There's a lot of misconception about when things leak out of Georgia when they occurred. This was not for the national championship game against Alabama, but that's okay. But he starts talking about screaming at his team, do you want to eat? I want to eat, and all this stuff. And of course, there's always. I mean, it always makes me think of the time when he said during a press conference, I can't walk past a brownie without stopping and eating some of it. And I'm thinking, I get it. But for Kirby Smart, who is as intense a person, I mean, I wonder if there's an off switch for him because it doesn't seem like it sometimes. And what Paul Finebaum had to say about him in May, I believe this on Birmingham radio earlier in May. He said, I mean, he goes, excuse me, he says, the run, oh my gosh, I thought Kirby was particularly interesting in relation to, quote, last year's done and we're hungry. Now, I don't know if that's exactly what Kirby said, but something like, it's what he said to Chris Lowe, something paraphrasing. He said, Paul goes on to say, I just think here's a guy who's maybe 2 plays away from a third national championship history and everything that we spent a season talking about. And he's able to portray his team as hungry, which is really very smart. It's well thought out. So I do think you have to be careful with this, okay? If you're a head coach, you can only, and he's not doing what Dabo does, which is the disrespect card. But you're only, to me, allowed to pull this card every now and then. Georgia can legitimately pull this card right now. I don't know if they could have pulled it in 23, in 22 or 23. They won a national championship, then they won 2, and it's just like okay, you're hungry. I mean, whatever. You just had a feast. But they didn't win the national championship in 23, and there was no looking back on it, and this is the ridiculous part now, there was no win that was sort of good enough. They blew out a top 10 Ole Miss team, a team that finished in the top 10. They blew them out completely. They blew out Florida State. There's always a, yeah, but. They solidly beat Missouri. I don't think anybody, I'm not aware that anyone has 3 wins like that outside of Michigan, who had Ohio State, who did not belong in the top 10 at the end of the season. The win over Alabama, and then the win over UW, as well as, all the other games that they played this past season. Now I'm going to look up who Michigan played. It wasn't a great schedule, I will say that. But in the playoff, once you start winning games, you start winning games. So those games all count. But, Georgia, they played Penn State, who's trash, let's just be honest, Iowa. So it was the 3 teams I mentioned for Michigan. So if you are Kirby, and these are my words, and you should have won the national championship a season ago, and you didn't, does that make you hungry? It would be a motivating factor for sure. I don't know why that would not be a motivating factor the entire season in 2024. The problem is, okay, this is not like the holiday season, for lack of a better term, in 2021. Okay, lest we forget that Georgia played its worst game in a while, probably in a significant amount of time, when they played Alabama, and Alabama was a lot of that in 2021. They didn't just turn around. This isn't a 4-month or 4-week later process. This is a 9-month later process. The team is not the same team. I was there for those games. I saw the look when Georgia came from the sideline to their locker room in 2021. And, they knew they had another shot. But again, that was a whole team by itself. This is a different team. You can't have revenge, and that's not what I'm saying they're saying. You can't have revenge. You can't have this mindset of, we're going to do it, for, the Gipper or whatever. This is a different team completely. I mean, there's going to be, this doesn't matter, but like Ryan Puglisi's on this team. You know what I mean? So, like, how is that different than, having Brock Bowers on the team? Well, one of them played a lot last year, and one of them didn't play. Or what's it like in the quarterback room without Brock Vandagriff, and you have Puglisi? Can one person change a team? They can. They can change the ingredients, the chemical makeup, whatever you want to call it, the good time of the team. That can all be affected by a player, because any one player can shift a practice and therefore shift a game and therefore shift a season. And for Georgia, when Kirby talks about his hunger, he's not just talking about the brownies that he sees in the facility sometimes. Although I have to say this about brownies. Like, can we just not make them? Because if we don't make them and people don't get them, then they're not there to eat. Because when you get to our age, you're like, what's another brownie? What's another brownie? Like, am I going to die a day earlier because I'm nibbling on this brownie? I don't really like brownies, and I eat them. See, that's the real problem with brownies. Like, brownies, first of all, most people don't know how to make them. Let's be straight here. Most people don't know how to make them because they're making them out of a box. If you're making them out of a box, let me just add this too. Let me add this to my brownie rant, okay? Two things. A, if you're delivering brownies to the facility at Georgia or giving them to me, don't bring them out of a box. You're insulting the process. If you're giving brownies as a gift or a whatever, stop it. Just go with the flour. Make it from scratch, man. It's okay. That's what cocoa is for. I mean, it's all there, guys. This Georgia team, are they hungry? I just think it's such a hard thing to know. Because, now he's saying we're hungry. I mean, my suspicion is they are, but I think, there's different levels of that. It's a different team. They're going to have to, Robinson doesn't know what it's like to have lost the national championship, in December. He doesn't have the first, he never played. KJ Bolden, these guys are going to play for Georgia. And they're not going to understand the stakes of what's going on in an acute way until they lose, or maybe until they have to save themselves. I don't know. But I know that all of these head coaches are very good at motivating and at that aspect of an organizational culture. That's really important. And that's what nearly all head coaches do. What I am, thankful I don't have to deal with at Georgia is, you don't hear Kirby sort of saying, well, you should feel sorry for us. That's what that's Dabo, that's Auburn, that's, nobody's ever going to feel bad for Georgia or Texas or Alabama or LSU. Man, y'all should win. So you got to be the bully on the block, because you already are the bully. And if he's saying that the bully's hungry, well, it's time to go get, either a snack or a full, meal. Like, we're going to eat like Viking Kings, probably no brownies there, unfortunately. But they'd probably be out of a box with the way you people are. So, these seasons, it is like driving a car. You cannot, I don't think, try to motivate all out all the time, because the message will get sort of diluted. My head coach in college was not dissimilar to Kirby Smart. He was a smaller person. Not that Kirby's small, but he's amongst the giants, that's for sure. And, it was high energy all the time. And, like, that can wear on a team. Like, that's a lot. It's a lot. It was a lot. And, you have to modulate that. You cannot go in terms of motivation now. I'm not talking about practice. I'm talking about in terms of your message. You can't scream at people all the time. And I'm not aware that they do that at Georgia. And my point is, if you only like light into your guys all the time, they won't know what it means when you light into them. They're going to think that's just the way you are. And so when he's talking about, hey, we're hungry, he's going to have to figure out how to take that message. We're almost at the season. I mean, the 4th of July is in 6 weeks or 5. That is the start of football. And football is just like on a narrow break right now, okay? But that is the start of it, is the 4th. And you've got to get from the 4th all the way to like December 4th. Let me see when the SEC championship game is. It's the 7th. So you've got, that's almost 5 months of, development, of recruit. This is just a team development, scouting yourself, school, injuries, everything, all of these things, the nomenclature, everything. How do they call, like, at Tucker, we didn't play positions in basketball. We had concepts. Well, at Coker, we had positions, and that will be, the nomenclature, getting, Ryan Puglisi to understand, Dwight Phillips Jr. Speaking of Tucker, Dwight Phillips Jr. is going to have to understand what everything means on the board and not have to think. He's just going to have to go play if he's important, So it's all of these things, Ernest Green, Tate. What's Tate's motivation, for lack of a better term, like in terms of an acting? What's the point here? If they're hungry, things will take care of themselves. But it's not always easy to get that from the start. Maybe that's to the starting line, and the finish line will take care of itself, like getting Georgia to the beginning of the season. Because, I mean, if you look at the beginning of the season, you've got 3 games that, frankly, I'm just going to say it now, Georgia should probably win all 3. And I'm talking about the Alabama game as well. But, they could lose all 3 in theory. They won't, but they could. So you're talking about, the start of the season with Clemson, Kentucky, and Alabama. You're playing them in the first 5 weeks of the season in the first 4 games. 4 games, 5 weeks. You've got Bama, Clemson, 2 teams that, certainly have names. And you're going to Lexington, where Georgia's not played great in Lexington. Okay, I mean, in 2002, freezing, horrific game, bad offensive performance. Probably Mike Bobo was the coordinator. In 2020, again, probably Mike Bobo was the coordinator. They played bad. It was just not good offense. 18 was fine. 18 was a good effort. 16, they had to win on the last play of the game. They had to play on the last play of the game. They had to win it when Rodrigo knocked it through. Jacob Eason takes them down the field. That's the last 4 times they've been at Kentucky. They played well. I would say well once, which was 18. 14, they completely demolished Kentucky. In 12, they had to save themselves. Do you remember that? In 10, with Sean Ely with 5 touchdowns, they played great. And then in 8, Matthew Stafford had to save them. Or DeMarcus Dawgs had to save them, I guess it was. In 6, they lost. So going up to Lexington, they should win, but it's not like oh, well, we're just going to go beat their ass. Not that Kentucky team. I mean, they're tough to deal with. They're not a lot of fun. And I mean, the way that Georgia beat Kentucky's brains in this past year, the Georgia kids won't be thinking about that. The Kentucky kids will. And that will be a game that, it's a sandwich game. It's after a gimme game. And it's a week before, a week off before Alabama. Georgia will, if you're hungry, you're not looking forward, in theory, right? You're thinking about this meal. So let's just see what happens. I mean, I think it's the easy part is saying, hey, we're hungry. The hard part is proving it. And we're going to see if these dogs got it or not.